legislation which was more at home in the EFF, one would imagine. Expropriation, what are your thoughts?
Well, like you're saying, I think having seen that they lost their majority and it went to a party like the MK party, maybe that got them to think, actually, maybe we're not communist enough. Maybe we're not as bold in these evil, divisive, destructive ideas as somebody like Jacob Zuma. Maybe that's why the MK party has gotten so many votes now, right? And they've gone full, they're going further and further in their destructive ideas. And it's very important for the people to realize. I know that it's easy for one without a house today, one without land today, one without property today to say, yeah, let's support the expropriation without compensation. But if you are a proper human being, you are aspiring to own it in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And you should think that, yes, today they might be taking from Mike, but tomorrow they might be taking from you as Sipho. And another key thing is, most of the time, I think when we think expropriation without compensation, we limit it to land, but property is not just land. If this government deems it fit that your car, which is property, is good for the good of the public, they can do it. If they say your corner house here is great for us, we can build a road here, they can take it. And what's worse is they have clearly said without compensation. And President Cyril Ramaphosa might not do it in his term. Whoever comes after him might not do it in their term, but God forbid, Jacob Zuma might come back and he will do it very happily. Your children may be the ones that suffer because you were supporting this nonsensical act. I think with the expropriation without compensation, it's very important for people to realize that from 1995 to 1996, the ANC had it in their power to expropriate land and give it to all black people that have a rightful claim. And they have failed to do that. I've mentioned before that my family had a rightful claim in Valmont-Star. And we went and they said, yes, actually, you can go there. After we've planned to say, this is how we're going to divide the land and use it, we realized that people who didn't even belong in Valmont-Star were given the land by ANC cadres. In addition to that, the ANC has already purchased lots of land from white farmers, and instead of them giving that land to many black people who are aspiring farmers, hard-working farmers who have already proven that they can farm, they are holding on to that land. You cannot be serious if you think that a person or a party that has shown you over and over again that they don't want to give people land will now suddenly want to give you land. The ANC has a track record. They have shown us time and time again. It is time for us as South Africans, black, white, Indian, and colored, to see and believe who they are. The expropriation without compensation bill is only for them, not for you and I.
Yeah, I must admit, I think it was I couldn't help you. You really got me thinking the other day, and I watched your piece about our favorite person, Panyaza Lesufi, and the Gauteng debacle. For anybody that's not based in Johannesburg at this point in time, this is the part of the show where I always say, Johannesburg has to be seen to be believed. Gauteng has to be seen to be believed. It looks like a war zone. Those pictures that you're seeing from places in Ukraine that have been bombed out, that's what Gauteng looks like, except that their traffic lights and street lights work, ours don't. But I couldn't help thinking, because there was some millions. But Gauteng government pays, what's that wonderful figure? 35 million rand a month. Per month in rental. But they've got 40 buildings that are unused. But now, I was wondering if they want to take, because they don't cite farms anymore, because they know that that's very, very dangerous to talk about farmland. But they'd say, yes, but it's about buildings that have been abandoned. Well, surely if the Gauteng government's abandoning their own buildings, then that should be expropriated. But the problem is, who do you then give it to? The Gauteng government. Again. So, that just shows the ridiculousness of a law like that, where it can't be managed. It can't work.
It can't.
It's impossible. It's technically impossible, because there was the old story back, in the day of God lives in Pretoria. God doesn't live in Pretoria, believe me. You don't have some divine person over there who's running a wonderfully efficient operation that gets the right person on the right piece of land.
Yeah.
No.
And even if it wasn't under the ANC, even if it could be done by somebody, that's not something that any nation wants, because every nation needs to have that protection of private property. If you don't have the security of private property, what are you working for? Every one of us needs to know that I have worked so many years. I've bought my house. I've paid for the bond for 10, 15, however long, or those who can afford it. I've bought this flat for my child. You need that security, because if you don't have that security, then what are you doing it for? It doesn't make sense.
And you need to have the ability to build generational wealth. Why not?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't you do well and pass it on to your children?
Yeah.
Where's the problem with that?
Yeah.
If you don't raise the children well, that's fine. The money will end up back in society, because they'll blow it.
But you've done your bit.
But you've done your bit.
Yeah.
And it helps to make society stronger. And I loved what another podcaster who I follow closely, and I had him here as a guest last week, and that's Bonsai Shongwe, said that the difference between the comrades, as you put it, and unsuccessful countries in one side, and successful countries and Democrats on the other side, is that the one side believes in rules and the other side doesn't. And I suppose that just categorizes it so well. The ANC and its babies hate rules, don't they? They like rules for everybody else.
For everyone else, not for them.
Yeah.
They are able to set thousands of rules for us, rules that inhibit us from dealing with each other in the way that we see fit, And I think when I think of that, it makes me think of how I view them as people who, because when they started as an ANC, they were fighting an oppressor. That's all they know. They just know there's an oppressor. At one point, it was the National Party. At one point, it's white people in general. In some cases, it's the employer, right? If you're in a relationship as an employee and you have an employer, that employer is the oppressor. In some cases, parents are now the oppressors, right? We have seen how they come in between employers and employees, children and their parents, landlords and tenants, sometimes landowners and squatters. That's all they know. They have all this mindset of, we are here to liberate you from an oppressor. We're done with the apartheid oppression. Now we're going to find different kinds of oppressors. And we need to be very careful, right? Because right now, the white people are the oppressors. Once they're done with those, somebody else is going to be an oppressor, because that's how communism works. If we look at China, for example, there was no person of another race. It was just among Chinese people. But instead of it being a race against race, it was class against class. Right? So as a people, as South Africans, I know that it's very difficult for many South Africans who have been convinced that the ANC is, they're the gods, they're the saviors, them or their babies. We need to identify that these people are just bad for us.
Yeah, they are. Which sort of brings us neatly into a situation of, your own courage. Now, to everybody watching this, you got to have a thick skin to do this kind of thing, because some people will write some mean things in the comments, and they will be read, and you can develop a certain sort of insensitivity towards those comments, but they are there. I mean, in my case, the comments were going to be simple. I'm a DA guy. I'm a white monopoly capitalist. I'm trying to protect my privilege. It's the insults write themselves. But in your case, it's going to be those wonderful terms like sellout or clever black.